powerful people in the world, they see themselves as utterly incapable of actually creating a future in which everything's going to be okay.
A colossal compound on the island of Kauai, complete with a massive doomsday bunker. What is it with billionaires and their doomsday bunkers?
But I mean, the question is, what do they know that we don't know?
They're prepping for some kind of large-scale disaster.
I'm a bit worried about it, to be honest.
Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Meta, has started to prepare for the doomsday.
Is there something that Mark Zuckerberg seems to know that we don't?
How many have seen The Last of Us in the zombie apocalypse?
There is something you are not being told about. Well, at least not by this world. But you have been told, you just might not realize it yet. The world's richest people are all buying islands, purchasing huge tracts of lands in places like Hawaii and New Zealand, and having vast, sprawling compounds constructed in near secrecy, forcing the builders to sign unprecedented NDAs to keep all the details hidden and fitting them with blast-proof underground bunkers. They are doing this all so they can survive a future scenario that they call the event. The elites are very worried about the event. Mark Zuckerberg is so worried he spent the last 10 years having a 1,400-acre compound built in Hawaii at a cost of over $270 million, making it one of the most expensive properties in human history. It also includes a 5,000-square-foot underground shelter. And according to locals, there's even talk of building a vast underground city. The reason? The event. Hawaii is obviously an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. If there is something that really goes south, how long can you last without supplies? Zuckerberg's people won't even need to leave the compound to get supplies, because it's completely self-sufficient. The property has its own giant water tank and a wide variety of food being grown on site. The construction workers call it Fight Club because if they utter a word about it, they're immediately kicked off the project. And it's being constructed behind a shroud of secrecy, usually only seen with secure military installations. And there was no public review process, despite the complaints of irate residents. Ironic, since the man who built an empire off of sharing your private info is very keen to keep a lid on what he's up to. This 6-foot-tall rock wall along Koolau Road in Pella has been jokingly compared to the wall Donald Trump wants between the U.S. and Mexico. The wall protects his 700-acre estate. Not only does the Facebook founder's personal Xanadu boast blast-resistant doors, the door in the underground shelter will be constructed out of metal and filled in with concrete, a style common in the bunkers of bomb shelters. Just in case Zuckerberg and his family need to quickly vacate the 2 mansions built directly above it in a hurry. The 2 central mansions will be joined by a tunnel that branches off into a 5,000-square-foot underground shelter, featuring living space, a mechanical room, and an escape hatch that can be accessed via a ladder. There are guard towers and cameras everywhere. Eyewitnesses have reported weird loud noises that sound like gunshots emanating from the site. Suffice to say, whatever Zuckerberg is preparing his family for, it hardly looks like it's going to be something that blows over in a matter of weeks or months. After the Hawaii wildfires evicted many ordinary people from their homes, billionaire Frank Vandersloot recently dropped $51 million on 2,000 acres of ranch land there. The Hawaiian island of Lanai is now almost completely owned by Oracle billionaire Larry Ellison, and there's now an entire economy created in Hawaii based solely around the creation of a new surf class to service the mega-rich. Jeff Bezos spent $147 million buying 2 mansions on Indian Creek Island, while OpenAir CEO Sam Altman, a venture capitalist, and Peter Thiel have their own little arrangement where the pair will take a jet to one of Thiel's New Zealand properties with a bunker. Thiel has been fighting the local government for the past 2 years, trying to build his own 10-bedroom compound directly into the landscape, a doomsday bunker with the bonus of having one of the best views in the world. Wired News reports that New Zealand is now riddled with bunkers reserved for the tech elite, while Google co-founder Larry Page has also been quietly acquiring islands across the world. He now owns at least 4 that we know, 3 in the Caribbean and 1 in Fiji, all staffed with his own exclusive team of workers and servants, all located in areas that are virtually inaccessible to the general public. The Bidens are apparently hunkering down too. They are surrounding their Delaware property with a top-secret wall, according to writer Douglas Rushkoff, who met with a group of these billionaires for his book Survival of the Richest. They're completely obsessed with finding out how to, quote, best configure their bunkers to survive the end times, all in preparation for the event. Whatever the event is, the richest people in the world know about it and firmly believe that it's right around the corner. So what is the event? Just like looking at a few pixels of a picture and trying to figure out what the image is, you must zoom out and look at the entire image to know what you are seeing. Could this be some kind of social unrest that would lead to civil war? If it were that, you wouldn't be able to predict when and where with any kind of certainty. Certainly not the kind that would have these people spending millions of their wealth on these bunkers and compounds. Before they would do that, there would need to be an absolute certainty of what's coming. Not to mention, this isn't just America. Preparations are happening all over the world. Civil war would not affect every nation, and elites could just spend a fraction of what they are spending to set up a really nice compound somewhere in South America or Africa. You wouldn't need an isolated island and all the costs that come with that. Also, it's not just elites that are preparing for the event. There have been numerous news postings of nations stockpiling. Bloomberg has on multiple occasions pointed this out, raising the alarm of a threatened food supply from nations buying up and hoarding food. They're not alone in pointing this out either. Many news outlets are writing about this and speculating as to why nations are doing it. So here is where we need to start looking at what we know and putting the pieces together. There are only two things you build isolated bunkers and hoard food for, regardless of a person or a nation. It would either be a nuclear world war or a cataclysmic event. So are we talking about a nuclear World War III? Well, I think we can easily rule that one out due to the fact that this is coordinated information that nations on all sides of the fence and elites from every corner know about. If it were, that would be a secret not shared, like it currently is. Also, not to mention the near impossibility of setting that up to happen on a certain date or period of time that would allow you to tell people to be prepared for. And even if you think they could pull that off, they would be sentencing themselves to a slow, horrible death on a glowing ball of mud. No doubt they want to kill off most of the population, but they have no intent of killing themselves in the process. No, this is something very bad, and it's out of their control. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, I'm pretty sure I know what it is. In fact, I'm confident we've already told you about it.
In 2004, a very large asteroid roughly the size of a mountain was discovered and believed to be on a collision course with Earth. They named this asteroid Apophis, after the Egyptian god of chaos, and obviously you can tell why. NASA, of course, worked on calculating the path of this asteroid, and in December 2004 told us we would be safe. Apophis would pass unimaginably close to the Earth in 2029 but would not hit. They said it would pass so close that it would pass between our orbiting communication satellites and the Earth, when in fact they knew that it will hit off the coast of California on Friday, April 13th, 2029. That date is very important in understanding 2025. You'll see why when we get to that in a little bit. But real quick, why would NASA say it would pass so close but not hit? I mean, I'm not a scientist, but I don't see how it could get that close and not be captured by the Earth's gravity, especially on approach. Well, there are other scientists and astronomers out there that can do their own calculations and prove that we are on a collision course, so they needed to make the lie believable enough to buy time. And how is it that the exact day and location for impact can be calculated if it's not going to collide? If the argument is that you've played with the numbers to get this exact day and location, then my question is, why did you use those numbers to come up with this very exact day and location? Now, I'm not without understanding here. I do think that previous administrations were hiding this without any evil intent. I do understand why they would want to avoid this level of panic until they could assure the world that they've got it under control. So I don't believe this is currently being done with malicious intent. I do believe they underestimated the scientific community's ability and willingness to ascertain and disseminate the actual trajectory of this asteroid. Many top and even famous scientists are loudly saying and proving that we have been lied to. Harry Lear, Assistant Chief of Staff Intelligence, in January 2018 wrote an open letter to then-President Trump and many scientists warning that NASA's trajectory calculation of Apophis is off by as much as 600,000 miles. He then also implies that this could send Apophis crashing into the Earth on April 13, 2029. Lear's letter begged the President and U.S. government scientists to cross-check these calculations immediately, even though he ends his letter with an ominous statement that it may already be too late and that we are already out of time. Besides Lear, top 100 scientist Nathan Myhrvold, in a recent peer-reviewed paper, refutes much of the data from NASA and charges them with deliberately misreporting threats by near-Earth objects and behaving extremely deceptively, with deliberate and scientific misconduct in a cover-up of very real and potential imminent space threats. Even famous planetary scientist and astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson admits that on April 13, 2029, Apophis will come so close to Earth that it will dip below our orbiting communication satellites. It will be the largest, closest thing we have ever observed to come by Earth. The orbit we now have for it's uncertain because these things are hard to measure and hard to get an exact distance for. We cannot tell you exactly where that trajectory will be. I'm going to play a video of him talking about it from March 12, 2008. Now, in the video, he's not talking about it hitting in 2029. In fact, he's saying it will miss, but it could certainly be influenced by Earth's gravity and then later hit again in 2036, which is a contradiction to his earlier statement where he's saying we can't know for certain and it could hit in 2029. For the sake of not confusing the point, I'm going to clip that part out.
There is an asteroid discovered in December 2004 called Apophis, named for the Egyptian god of death and darkness. It was named only after its trajectory was identified to intersect that of Earth. Had that not been the case, we would not have named it Apophis. Could name it like Tiffany or something, or Bambi, something not threatening. This one was headed towards Earth, Apophis. All right, once you discover an asteroid, you got to wait a little while to get enough of a segment of its orbit to calculate what the full orbit will be to know if it will come in harm's way. So, we did that. We, the community. I wasn't the one. We got peeps who do this, okay? So, peeps, if you're over 30, means people, okay? Forgive me. If I say you got peeps, it's people. It's actually a loving phrase, right?
It's not little yellow marshmallow.
They're not,
no.
Right. So, we get the orbit. Turns out, in the year 2029, the month of April, the 13th of April, a Friday, Apophis will come so close to Earth that it will dip below our orbiting communication satellites. And it is the size of the Rose Bowl. It'll be the largest, closest thing we have ever observed to come by Earth. Now, of course, a much bigger asteroid took out the dinosaurs, but we weren't around at the time. So this is in the era of observing the cosmos with technology. This will be the closest, biggest thing we'll ever see come by. Now, the orbit we now have for it is uncertain enough, because these things are hard to measure and hard to get an exact distance for. The orbit is uncertain enough, so we cannot tell you exactly where that trajectory will be. It hits the Pacific Ocean, plunges down into the Pacific to a depth of 3 miles, at which point it explodes, cavitating the Pacific in a hole that's 3 miles wide, 3 miles deep. That will send a tsunami wave outward from that location. That's 50 feet high, 5 stories. Oceans don't like having holes in them. So, this 3 mile high wall does what? You say that so timidly, sir. Collapses. It's a 3 mile high wall of water. Thank you. Falls back into the hole, sloshing against itself with such ferocity that it rises high into the atmosphere and falls back down to the ocean, cavitating the ocean again. So now you make a cavity a second time. This cycle takes about 50 seconds. You can calculate it, okay? So here comes the first tsunami, and 50 seconds later comes another tsunami. So there you are on the beaches of Malibu. Tsunami comes in. Now, unlike the tsunami in Indonesia, which was one wave that went deep into the shore, this first wave needs a supply of water to exist, so that the next wave actually sucks back on it to create itself. So, this tsunami will only go in about a quarter of a mile. We have the sound effects person in the upper row there. So it only goes in a quarter mile before it gets sucked back out for the next wave to come. Here's the problem. Whatever was there on the coastline is now brought back out to sea. And the next tsunami brings it back to the shore. All the $1 million homes in Malibu, they get taken out to the sea and then back. But this time they're in a slightly different shape, okay? And so what happens is all the artificial stuff, all the houses, the factories, they get churned into this ablative force that sandblasts the entire west coast of North America clean. So have a nice day for that.
Now, more telling than warnings coming from the scientific community is what the governments are actually doing. In June 2018, Space Force was announced.
When it comes to space, too often, for too many years, our dreams of exploration and discovery were really squandered by politics and bureaucracy, and we knocked that out. So important for our psyche, what you're doing. It's going to be important monetarily and militarily, but so important for right up here, the psyche. We don't want China and Russia and other countries leading us. We've always led. We've gone way far afield for decades now, having to do with our subject today. We're going to be the leader by far. We're behind you 1,000%. When it comes to defending America, it is not enough to merely have an American presence in space. We must have American dominance in space. So important. Very importantly, I'm hereby directing the Department of Defense and Pentagon to immediately begin the process necessary to establish a Space Force as the 6th branch of the armed forces. That's a big statement. I am instructing my administration to embrace the budding commercial space industry. We are modernizing out-of-date space regulations. They're way out of date. They haven't been changed in many, many years. And today we're taking one more step to unleash the power of American ingenuity. In a few moments, I will sign a new directive to federal departments and agencies. They will work together with American industry to implement a state-of-the-art framework for space traffic management.
It was announced as a new branch of the armed forces to defend America and maintain American dominance in space. However, soon after being signed into law, its mission and goals were made public, and the focus was on future asteroid threats. NASA's focus has shifted also. And if that wasn't telling enough, on November 24, 2021, NASA launched its first mission to test asteroid deflection. And here's where it gets truly telling. Not that it hasn't been already, but the only other country on Earth that has a space program and the means to do what America is doing is China. Wouldn't you think they would be working to save themselves also? If you think so, you would be correct. The China National Space Administration is planning on launching its first ever test of its asteroid deflection system in 2025. So stop and think about these things. Space Force is formed, and then we find that its main mission is not to defend America, but to protect us from asteroid threats. NASA's main budget and mission is starting to focus on asteroid deflection as well. In fact, they are now going to be working hand in hand with Space Force to test asteroid deflection. At the same time, China is also developing its own plan and program to deflect asteroids, and their first test is scheduled in 2025.
You may have seen in recent weeks where they're reaffirming something they already did say, and I dealt with it in both the Wormwood Prophecy as well as the new book, The Messenger, in which they're saying that while Apophis is going to make a very, very close miss of the Earth, they are saying that right now they're calling an all clear, saying that it's not going to impact the planet. Now, this is something that your listeners need to really pay attention to. There are numerous scientists that reacted to their most recent all clear, warning that the trajectory that they have made, their calculation of Apophis, is off by as much as 600,000 miles.
Good.
In fact, the mathematician Harry Lear, he implies that Apophis is going to crash into Earth in 8 years from now, and he even went so far as to send a letter to the President of the United States begging him to have the U.S. government scientists cross-check those calculations immediately, because he says that NASA's either playing a game with the trajectory stats or they are just they're intentionally misleading the public. And then he ends his letter. Anybody can log online and read his letter. He ends that dispatch with this ominous admonition that he thinks we're already out of time anyway. But maybe if we got on it now, and I think behind the scenes they are on it now, I think it's part of the reason Space Force was formed, that they're trying to figure out how they might be able to mitigate this incoming event. But it's not just Lear. Nathan Myhrvold, who was the head of Microsoft, the science department for Microsoft for many years, he is consistently listed every year in the top 100 scientists in the world. And he recently wrote a peer-reviewed paper that I referred to in the books called An Empirical Examination of Wise, Neo-Wise Asteroid Analysis and Results, in which he not only refutes a lot of the data from NASA, he charges them outright with deliberately misreporting threats by these near-Earth objects and of behaving extremely deceptively with deliberate scientific misconduct. So in other words, he is saying this wasn't an accident on part. They are going out of their way to intentionally cover up very real, potentially imminent space threats, including Apophis. And then there's a video on YouTube that anybody can watch right now that's got the famous planetary scientist and the astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, very popular figure. And he says that on April 13, 2029, I'll quote, this is from the YouTube video, this is a quote, Apophis will come so close to Earth that it will dip below our orbiting communication satellites. It will be the largest, closest thing we have ever observed to come by Earth. The orbit we have for it now is uncertain because these things are hard to measure and hard to get an exact distance for, so we cannot tell you exactly what that trajectory will be. So, and this was the same thing that the astronomer from the Pentagon told me. He said it's absolutely baloney. Well, he used a different word that I won't use. He said it's absolute baloney. He said, you can't say that a stone as big as Apophis, and it's a monster, is going to come literally below the satellites, knock out some of the satellites, below the satellites that are in orbit around this planet, and yet say with any certitude, but no worry, it's not going to strike the planet. He said that's absolute baloney. Watch the movie Greenland, where right up until and so you know that in the beginning, NASA, they're all saying, no worries, it's just going to skim past, no big deal, take pictures, draw cartoon pictures of it. And then all of a sudden, everybody starts heading for cover. And that is what many of these people believe is going to happen with Apophis. Now, why would NASA be covering that up? Well, it's really obvious, because it would create mass panic. And maybe meanwhile, they might come up with some way to mitigate the incoming of that asteroid.
They're sending a spaceship up right now to blast an asteroid. They announced
they are.
Yeah.
That's exactly right, and that's the reason why they are doing that.
Ladies and gentlemen, Apophis is wormwood, and its correct trajectory has it hitting off the coast of California on Friday, April 13th, 2029. Now, why is that date important? Because tribulation is a 7-year time period broken up into 2 3.5-year time periods. The second 3.5-year time period is known as Great Tribulation. And at the beginning of that time period, wormwood, an asteroid the size and dimensions of Apophis, is going to hit the Earth in an area that the initial impact will destroy 1/3 of the Earth's ships, which is exactly what will happen when Apophis hits off the coast of California. Wormwood or Apophis, whatever you want to call it, is going to be beyond devastating. Listen to our episode 26 podcast if you want to get a full description of what it will do. The main thing here is that since we know it's going to hit Friday, April 13th, 2029, and we know that will be at some point very early in the start of Great Tribulation, we can then back up 3.5 years to know what year tribulation will start. 3.5 years prior to April 2029 is 2025. I'm not saying tribulation will for sure start in 2025, but there is strong evidence that it will. Evidence strong enough that it would win a conviction in a court of law.
Since that podcast was made, we've had many articles posted to our news about different missions to study and move asteroids. The one question I do have is, some, but not all elites, are preparing their bunkers on islands in the Pacific. If Apophis is going to hit off the coast of California, are they not worried about the massive tsunamis in the Pacific? The islands are basically mountains sticking up out of the water. It would seem logical that if you were to build your bunker at or near the top with the underground part being inside the mountain, you would be okay. The islands also do not have a continental shelf that will push the waves up, so they will not be as high as they will be in coastal regions. It could also be that they had adjusted their prediction and believe that it will hit on land in the west. Personally, I think that is the case. Revelation 8:8-9, describes a mountain hitting the water. The very next 2 verses tell us that wormwood, described as a burning torch, will then hit land. Right now, Apophis is in one piece, and I believe its trajectory has been calculated to hit somewhere in the western U.S. However, at some point part of it is going to break off and hit in the Pacific. Either way, since the information is being withheld from us, we can't say for sure. If I am correct and the event is Apophis, or more accurately wormwood, as the Bible tells us, then the event is roughly 5 years away for this doomed world. For those of us who belong to Jesus, our event is directly in front of us,